Hey everyone, welcome to Bhuvi-Talks. I'm your host Bhuvi Anand. Today the topic we are going to discuss about is homeschooling. The guest whom I have here is Mrs. Mary Andy Olenik. She's a mother of five children and who's been homeschooling for almost 2 decades now. I'm so thrilled to have her here. Hey Mary, would you like to share a little bit about yourself for our listeners?
Sure. So my name is Mary, and we live in central Pennsylvania. We have five children. Our children are range from 20 down to 8 years old. We have two in college, two in high school, and one in elementary school. And we just enjoy spending time together as a family. We tend to do things like hiking, read a lot of books, games, puzzles, and things like that. And I would say that one of our strongest threads that's woven through our family is our faith. And that's kind of where everything stems from. And that's where our foundation grows.
That's very nice. So now to start, I would like to know about the moments or the series of experiences that made you think, yes, homeschooling is the best for our family. What made you take that decision?
Okay, so I would say that there are kind of a lot of things that happened along the way. When I was younger, my sister started homeschooling, and that was before anyone was homeschooling, but she had moved to Florida, and in their area, the public school system was not the greatest environment for children, and she did not want her children in that setting, and that was the only option they had. So it was either that or keep them home. And so they kept them home. And I saw this all happening. And at first, my mom and dad and myself and others in our family didn't understand it because it was so new. But as we watched it and we saw it growing, it became very fascinating to me. I never considered that that would be something I would do for our family at that point. Like, even when Andy and I first got married, that was not something that was on the radar for either one of us. Um, when we started having children, our daughter Isabel is our oldest, and she started in a traditional setting with preschool and then kindergarten and had the time of her life. She was a happy go lucky little girl. She was always smiling, laughing, very silly and creative. Um, and she could often be found singing her day. So when she was making her bed, she'd be singing and all of these things. And it was so charming and sweet. She started first grade and things started to shift in her. We started to see a change in her demeanor. She became sad. She stopped singing. She was crying a lot. She became fearful. Going to bed was hard. And instead of bouncing out of the car and running to the doors of the school, she would start crying and clinging to me, and she didn't want to leave. We talked with her teacher. We talked with some of the other families. The teacher was not real open to what was going on. She just figured it was something at home that we just needed to work on. And the other families, their advice to us was, you just need to weather this year. This is a hard teacher, and you just need to weather it, and everything gets better after this. In my heart, all I could think was no little 6-year-old should ever have to weather a year. It should be joy filled. You're 6. You should be able to go to school having fun, playing, enjoying what you're doing. And so Andy and I had, at that point, many discussions as to what our options were. Do we switch schools? Do we try a different private school? Do we try the public school? We went through so many different discussions on the whole thing, and homeschooling kept kind of creeping in there a little. We had decided at that point that switching schools and changing friends and doing all of that may have been more detrimental to where she was than to try and homeschool her. And I figured, as a first grader, I could probably handle first grade material to teach her. And so we made the decision, and we went and talked to the school and said, we're going to pull her out. And the next day she was with us. And so she was home. And at that point, her little brother was in preschool. We just brought him home too. So then they were at home and we just started homeschooling from there. And we kind of thought that it would just be that year. Let's just get through this year and bring her spunk back, bring her back to where she felt safe and happy and joyful again. And by the end of the year, we were having so much fun. We decided,
Why not?
well, why not try
Yeah.
one more year? And so we just kind of went from there until it just became, okay, this is where we're at and this is what we're doing.
Okay. So on listening to this, there are two things which comes to my mind. So one is like what you're saying, you were not prepared at all. You were not expecting this situation.
No, no.
Because including me, there are many parents who feel that they have to be completely ready and prepared to start this homeschooling journey. I think only intention is needed to start the journey. Is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying. And if you think about it this way, are you completely prepared and ready to be a parent? No. Things come up as they change and they get older and you hit a new phase. You know, you're not completely ready for that journey either. So you learn along the way, and you were made for these kiddos. They are your children for a reason. You're the perfect parents for your children. And so if you're the perfect parents for them and you don't have every answer going into parenting, that's okay. You also don't have every answer going into homeschooling, and that's okay. So when you're getting ready to homeschool or you're deciding, is this for me? It's on my heart. I feel like I'm being drawn to this or called to this, but I'm so scared. I'm worried. I'm anxious. I'm doubtful. What if I can't do this? What if I don't know what to do? Those questions are all normal, and they may pop up throughout your homeschooling journey when you hit a new phase. But I think that if it's on your heart and that's something you want to do, it's okay that you don't have all the answers, because you probably won't ever have every answer. You just need to trust that I am enough for my kids because I am the perfect parent for them. And the beauty of homeschooling is that you can meet your kids where they are. And so everything comes into place. Everything falls where it should. And you're not alone. That is one thing I will say. From the time my sister was homeschooling to now, you're not alone. She felt very alone. There was very little out there for homeschooling families. Now the resources are abundant, and you have so many spaces and support groups you can rely upon to not feel like you're isolated and alone in this journey.
True.
So no, I was not prepared. And we just took it, honestly, at the beginning, we just took it one day at a time. Like, okay, these are the things she needs to learn this year. Let's do one thing at a time. What do we need to get through? And it was one day at a time, just planning like that and preparing for each day until we kind of established a rhythm and a routine for our days.
Now they're talking about routine and rhythm. I would really like to take a sneak peek into your homeschooling day. What really happens in a typical day? And especially, I'm curious about how do you handle different age groups? How do you navigate different ages at once?
So our typical day kind of went through a few phases along the journey. When our decision came to start homeschooling with our eldest, we had a 6-year-old, 4-year-old, 2-year-old, and a baby. For the next few years at that time, our typical day was very similar because they were all very close in age. It was easier to do group things. So we could homeschool as a family. So we would start our day with what we called morning time. And morning time included prayer, stories, Bible time. We would talk about different activities that might happen in the day. We would talk about the calendar, different things like that, that kind of brought everybody together. And we always used books and poetry at that time. So a lot of read-alouds and games or puzzles, jump rope, different activities like that. And we would then move into our subject areas like science, social studies, language arts, and I would do that as a whole. So we would sit down, and if we were learning about animals, for example, say we were doing the classification of animals, we would all learn about mammals together. And so we would talk about mammals together as a family. What are the characteristics? What do we do for that? And so we'd learn that whole lesson together. And then depending upon their age, they would have a different activity that they would do for following up with that. And so then, our 2-year-old could do just coloring or playing
Something
with
related to
Play-Doh or
animals.
things
It
like
doesn't.
that.
Okay.
Right. And then our oldest would do her activity that came along with that. So we would do a lot of things together as a group with varying activities afterwards. And then during the way I made this work easiest was during nap times for our 2-year-old and our baby. We then did math or reading, the things that were very much skill-based, and everyone was different in
So
those
that
skills.
goes during
And
those
so,
nap times.
Yes, we utilized nap times as much as we could for those skill-based times because they needed a little more attention from me. That did not, having said that, that did not
Yeah, I
always
was about to ask
work.
that.
So, the one thing I had to come to grips with was no 2 days in homeschooling ever look the same. And so instead of a schedule like you might have in a traditional settings, so 8 to 8:30 is this time, 8:30 to 9:30 is this time, that never really worked because you have babies that are crying. You have somebody that falls and gets hurt and needs a Band-Aid. You have a doctor's appointment that you have to get someone to. So your days are not going to flow the same every day. And so we had more of a routine or a flow of the day. So it went from morning time to our subject areas to math and reading. So it kind of flowed through the day, but we had to be very flexible in case something happened. The one thing that was very much a part of our days and always has been from the beginning, even till now, is read-alouds. We use lots of books, and that could work for all ages. It was wonderful. As long as you have a good story that's grabbing everybody, even the littles can be there. They can be sitting on a blanket playing with toys. They can be wandering around, toddling around. Someone can be coloring. And as I was reading, they were all doing what they needed to do to stay with us in our same area, in our space, physical space. That still happens. We still do read alouds, even though when our college students come home, I still read aloud to everyone together. And we just have to be very careful in the books we choose that it suits a 20-year-old and an 8-year-old. But so that was our beginning, how it looked when we were all being able to work together as a whole. Once we hit high school, it started to change because then I had a high schooler and a 5-year-old. We that was very different age ranges. So the one thing that we were able to utilize at this point was our co-op. Our co-op has great resources for us as far as the high school classes. And so they would go there once a week and they would get that class taught to them. So they were having that education brought to them through that. And then they would come home and do their homework throughout the week. As they got to high school, they had to become much more independent in what they were doing. Even in middle school, our kiddos are very independent in what they do because they have learned how to do that throughout their time with us, knowing that days have to be flexible. So they have to learn that, well, the youngest probably needs more time with mom. They need that individual attention because their skills are at the point where they can't be independent very frequently. They could do some things, but not as much as the middle schoolers. So middle school and high school, that was when our things started to change. And I could do groups with 2 high schoolers, 2 middle schoolers, and then our elementary level. And so then it just kept switching and you kept doing different things based on that. And the time changes just had to fluctuate. So there were days when our 2 high schoolers were in chemistry together. And chemistry is hard to learn one
Yes.
day a week. So I had to go back and reteach myself chemistry. And when I would get our younger children into bed, we would do chemistry at night. That was an exhausting time because by that point in the day, my brain was
Yeah, I
tired.
know.
So teaching chemistry wasn't the easiest thing to teach at night. But we made it through that and they did very well and we were fine with that. But it's just you have to know that no days will look alike and you have to be very flexible in your
Yeah.
timing. So it's okay if it doesn't look the same. It's okay if you don't have a traditional time frame of, well, we're going to have school from 8 to 3 or whatever. If that doesn't work, that's okay. We have to be flexible in what works for our family at the time and our children at the time.
I think it's about the mindset first. We have to get our mindset fixed. It's okay to take it slow. It doesn't have to, we don't have to take the peer pressure, right? We shouldn't compare ourselves with any other family. That's really great. One thing which fascinates me about homeschooling is the different approaches that every family follows. So, do you have any specific educational philosophy and how it has been evolved through the years? Have you tried experimenting different techniques like starting from traditional curriculum to flexible curriculum? Have you tried?
Yes, we kind of have had quite a journey through that. It's evolved and changed quite a bit throughout. When we started, my main focus for our first grader at that point was kind of to deprogram the mindset she had. She had come home feeling as if she was not capable, she
Okay,
couldn't do
you pulled
anything.
her out from the
So
school. Okay.
yes. And so her emotional level at that point was where we had to focus. And it was a big challenge because it was heartbreaking to see that. And so we did, at that point, we were researching things. There's a method called the Charlotte Mason method, and it's just very gentle and caring. And it's about living books that feel real and tell stories. There was a lot of nature study involved, things like that. And so it was more about bringing her into the joy of learning again. And so it was a gentle year where we spent hours outside playing and exploring and, finding critters and drawing pictures of them and studying what they ate or their habitats. And so we spent a lot of time outdoors just being with nature to kind of build that peacefulness in her again. And we played a lot of games. Our math was almost always just games. She came home with such a terrible view of what math meant to her and where her capabilities were. So we played all sorts of games. I would write math problems in hearts and tape them all around the house. And then she would have to go find them and come back and answer the math problems. So it was a very gentle point at that
But
level.
still, I'm sorry to interrupt. But still, you had a basic syllabus saying I have to cover this within the this year, or was it just like going with the flow?
So there are many places where you can find, by the end of the year, my first grader should know this. You can go to the library and get books that are literally say what my first grader should
Okay.
know, what my second grader should know. So you can find those types of resources. Your public school, you can go onto their website and find the standards of what each grade level should know by the end of the year. Even the private schools, you can find that on their websites and find what the standards are. So by the end of first grade, these are the things that your first grader should know, your second grader, third grader. I took it and have always taken it since that first year more as a tool to use, not as a strict written in stone, must follow kind of thing. Every child is different, and that cannot be more clear than when you
and that is
homeschool.
what is all about homeschooling. Otherwise, we would have rather sent them to schools. Yeah, true.
Yes, they are so unique. All five of our children learn differently. They have different learning styles. And so approaching that standard or what is expected of them by the end of the year needs to be handled delicately. Like it's a tool, it shouldn't rule you, it's there to guide you. And so when we would choose curriculum or things like that, that was the other thing. We would choose things that worked for our children. So in the beginning, that was definitely a learning process because, like you said, you're comparing yourself to all these other people or to the traditional school. Well, it should look like this and they should be able to do this and that and the other thing. It's not going to look like that by the end. They're going to be their own unique person by going through homeschooling. And the things that we use are geared toward our learning styles. So we have used 3 or 4 different math curriculums over the time based on our kiddos. In the beginning, it was a math curriculum that used many manipulatives. So they used their hands a lot and manipulating tools and different things. That worked beautifully in those early years for all of our kids. Then we switched over to something that was a little bit more concrete, and it laid things out a little differently. Another child of ours works very well with pictures. And so there's an online curriculum that we've used that uses lots of pictures that gets that in their brain. So it's been kind of a journey of learning about our children, what works best for them, and which curriculum will suit that. There are so many resources out there. It can get a little overwhelming. So that's one of the hardest things, I think, with homeschooling is when you look for a math curriculum and so many things come up, you're thinking, oh, how do I decide? And that is where other resources, we're asking other homeschooling families, looking at your children and thinking, well, this is how my child learns best. That would be where you need to go and get some answers to help yourself choose what is best. And often you'll be able to get some samples and things so you can see how those curriculums work. And that's what I had to do over the years. There was a point where there were many people recommending a particular curriculum to me. And I was like, okay, well, let's try it. Because I was new, I didn't know. And everything came in a box and it was the whole thing, all materials you would use for the year.
That's nice.
When you looked in the box, it was beautiful. I loved it. However, it didn't all work for my kiddos. Okay. They didn't learn the same way as everything in that. And it was really challenging for them and they were getting frustrated. So I said to myself, this isn't working for our family, but I like this piece of it. So instead of buying the whole set, we would do just one part of it, like the language arts part. Then I would do math somewhere else. And then there were many times where I was creating my own things for science and social studies or history. I spend a lot of time making my own things based upon the way our kids learn best. And we use something that might be considered my spine for those subjects. So it might be a book that is history timelines or social studies based on maybe American history or cultures around the world, things like that. We'll use that as a spine. And then we add all different things on it to build up where they learn best. So definitely we have become very eclectic along the years because one thing doesn't serve all in our family. It just doesn't work for our kids. And I want them to feel successful. I want them to feel excited about learning. I don't want it to be a drudgery every day. So that's kind of where we have landed, that it's an eclectic approach.
It sounds like there's a lot of trial and error, right? So we have to test and then see what exactly fits our family. I see there's a lot of effort and time that you have put in as a homeschooling mom. I'm sure certain days that you must be feeling overwhelmed doing jobs of like teacher, mom, and you have to take care of your household chores and everything. How do you, like, I'm sure there'll be some pressure faced by you. So how do you navigate those moments? Do you have any like go-to strategy for those kind of moments?
So I have a couple of things because yes, the pressure is there. I don't think when I look at it and when I talk to other families or friends who I have friends who are working moms, full-time working moms, and they have kids and they're in school and they're in sports. When you lay it all out, we're all struggling with the pressures of society these days. Society has everybody involved in way too many activities, and we're running from here to there. And so there's a lot of pressure on everyone. So I don't feel like it's specific to homeschool, the pressure, but there's definitely pressure. And trying to manage every day, it's definitely a challenge, and it's changed over the years depending on what is happening in our life at that time. When they were younger and we had the nap times, that was a very wonderful time. It was easier for me to manage things. And even at that time when they were all close together in that age group, even if the older ones were not napping, we built in a quiet time every day. And we still do that. So I have right now at home, we have a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 8-year-old. Everyone has a quiet time every day. They go to their room and they read quietly. Our 8-year-old might play with his Legos. That is one saving grace for me. So once nap time started to shift into no more naps, they all had to learn how to be in their rooms by themselves. And that was a gift. Not only, I realized over the time, not only for me to have that, okay, this is my time to breathe.
Yeah.
I can read a few pages of my book, or I can vacuum the living room or start dinner, anything like that. But for the kids to learn how to be on their own, when you're at home and you're with each other all day, every day, you need to know also how to handle yourself by yourself. So what are the things that you like to do when you're alone? Because throughout your life, you're going to have times where you have to be alone, and you have to know how to handle that. There isn't going to be a second throughout your day where you don't have some time to yourself. And so they have to learn how to handle that. And so I figure that was also a learning process and part of their schooling, that they had to learn what to do when they were by themselves during quiet time. So that was one thing I would say: always have a space for yourself every day built into your day. So quiet time is right after lunch from, I don't know, 12:30 to 1:30, something like that, whatever works for your family, but that is built into your day. And I also find that prayer is a gift, and we use that throughout our day with our children, with the way our day starts in the morning. If things are feeling chaotic, stopping, okay, let's just stop, relax, everybody breathe, let's pray, take a minute to really focus on what is important here and what are we doing. And I often say to the kids also, when they are feeling overwhelmed, feeling like they have too many things on their list, this didn't show up till later in middle school and high school. Before that, they were just carefree playing. But once they hit that and the classes get a little harder, they start to feel a little more overwhelmed. One of the things I often say to them is, let's stop and think, what is your next best step? That's all you have to focus on. Be present where you are. Don't go too far ahead, because that's when things start to spiral and your anxiety gets bigger. And so that was something that I have to stop myself too. And sometimes if it feels too big, I'll just say, guys, I'll be right back. I have to go to the bathroom. And I just go in the bathroom and go, okay, what's your next best step? What's the thing you need to do? And I also have a stash of chocolate, and I have a little piece of chocolate to calm myself down.
I initially wanted to ask you more about homeschooling, but after talking to you, you are a wonderful parent. I get lots of tips from you. That's so nice. Beautiful.
Thank you. You're so kind, Bhuvi. Thank you.
You were talking about curriculum. I have one quick question. So, does it have to go like I have to schedule math on one day, social on one day, science on one day? Is it like that? Or I know during initial years, it doesn't have to be exactly like that, because they don't have to learn about everything. But when they move into middle school and stuff, Did you schedule it like that?
Okay. So what we tend to do when they're younger, actually everybody throughout all the years, they have to do math and reading and some type of writing every day. So those are the everyday. If you don't do math every day, they kind of lose a little and you have to get them back in. Okay, this is what we just learned and this is where we are. So math every day is what we have found
Math
very
every
important.
day.
And math every day, reading every day. They must read every day and do some type of writing every day, even as simple as writing in your journal, making a list of what you want to do for your birthday one day, making a grocery list, something as far
But you
as
make
writing
sure that
goes every
they
day.
do writing every day.
Yes. And it doesn't have to be a full on
Sure.
essay or anything like that, just something related to that so that they're trying to get something in their head out to paper. So just kind of trying to do things like that. But those are the things every day. Then the science and history and religion and all the other curriculum subjects, they're one of the things that works when you're in a co-op is they get that one day a week. Then they may need support throughout the week from what they learned, but typically that's their classes on that one day. So we have taken on that also. And so our girls who are in high school now, we're doing American history together. And so we do that on Mondays when our 8-year-old is at his music lessons and choir class. When he's there, we do history.
Yeah.
And so, and our religion. So whatever we're doing with our high schoolers that needs to be separate from him, we do
All
when he
around.
is at other activities. And so, yes, they do that once a week and then move on from that. So I think that everybody probably has to figure out how that works best for themselves. Sometimes it's hard if you have somebody who is not so self-motivated. It might be hard to do it once a week. You might need to do twice a week or check-ins throughout the week. But our girls, we do our lesson on Monday. They have homework for throughout the week. Often it's reading and some type of taking notes or research. And then we meet again the next Monday and go through all that and have a new lesson on the next topic. And so it depends on if they're motivated to do that. Our girls are very good about that.
Nice.
But not everybody
know.
is. So it would have to be probably based on your own children. You might want to do twice a week where you do that. Our 8-year-old, we tend to do, he has science and social studies. We'll do maybe a lesson for each one on opposite days, but then he has activities that kind of follow up through the week with that, whether it's coloring or retelling the facts, or I make a scavenger hunt for him or something like that, and various books to go along with it. So it's kind of like a formal lesson and then little mini lessons, if that makes sense.
Okay. That's cool. I have so many questions in my head. Earlier, you were mentioning about chores. Do you involve your children in your everyday household chores? What do you think about that?
Yes. Yes. We tell them you're part of this family. This family only functions if we all work together. So yes, they have chores. Once they hit a certain age, when they turn 12, they have their own laundry day. And so they do their own laundry from beginning to end. And the girls have been learning cooking. And so they're getting on the schedule to prepare meals.
That's great.
They all know, even our 8-year-old, they all know how to clean a bathroom. They know how to vacuum.
So you
they know
let them
how
clean the
to,
bathroom and do all the vacuuming. Wow, that's nice. Oh, that's great.
yes, because I can't do everything.
Exactly.
That is the one thing that I have said to them. I cannot possibly do everything. You guys have to contribute in these ways. So yes, they have chores, and certain days of the week are bathroom chores or vacuuming chores. sweeping throughout, dusting, different things that they have to do.
I always try to do this with my elder one. So sometimes she's very cooperative, she does it. But how do you handle those times when they say, no, I don't want to do it. I am not interested. Like, or sometimes they throw tantrums for, how do you handle it? Do you get angry? Like, how do you handle those emotions?
It's a very tricky thing. Yes, I get angry and then I have to stop and be like, okay,
That
they
popping in the
just, there's
chocolate
something they're
moment.
telling me here. What is it that they're telling me? And we will go through various things throughout the time. Like for when they were all younger, they often had some kind of a reward system. So it was at one point we used popsicle sticks and they each had a little jar with their name on it. And if they did their chores, they got a popsicle stick in it.
Wow.
If they were kind to someone, they got a popsicle stick in there. And so we had these popsicle sticks in jars all on the table and they would be earning popsicle sticks. They had to have 10 popsicle sticks by the end of the day. And if everyone had 10, we could play a game, do a puzzle, read a story. And if not, then we would have to skip a story or something. But there were very few times when they didn't all have it, because I would notice if it was close to that time, I would give them extra jobs and be like, oh, you're almost there. You can get your popsicle stick. It's going to be great. What are we going to do tonight? And just try and get them motivated to do it. But the
So
tantrums are
everyone
one of
has
the
to
hardest
have 10.
things, which was hard. So they all kind of worked together to do that. Now, one of the other things we also did was individual things. We did do that if someone was struggling with something in
Uh-huh.
particular. Our youngest, when he was little, if we were going to play at someone's house, leaving their house was a very upsetting time for
Okay.
him. And it would sometimes melt in tears and tantrums. And so we had to work on that. So he had his own little chart when we are ending something, and it could have been simply ending a game here at home, or if he was allowed to watch a little show, ending the show, anything. Endings were hard. And so he had a little chart where he would earn stickers if he ended it positively. And it was very specific, like you end it with a smile, you say that was really fun, and we can walk away peacefully. Then you get your sticker. And then after he would earn so many stickers, he would get like a Hot Wheels car, or he would be
Oh,
allowed to have a little treat or something like that. And so then we would earn those little things too. So even though we did the group things with the popsicle sticks, we also did individual things as they were growing and learning. And with our older kids, one of the things that we did was if they had, they are not allowed to have a phone until they're
oh,
16. They, yeah. And once they start driving, they're allowed to have a phone. They did get an iPod when they were 12 or 13, right in around there, which is different. It doesn't have um, data or anything. They can't do a lot with it. So they can have that. But if they didn't do their chores, they couldn't get to their phone until after that was done.
okay.
And so things like that for the older kids, or if their chores weren't completed, they weren't supposed to watch TV that night or something like that. You know, so their things were geared a little differently
Amazing
once
ideas,
they hit the older
amazing ideas.
ages.
Beautiful. Ma'am, I feel like I have to take a note of all of this because the problems, whatever you're saying, I'm facing it every day. So I'm really grateful to get all the solutions. And so you mentioned about shows and everything for your little one, and also giving phones to your older ones at the age of 16. So does that mean that they don't have screen time, or what's your screen time schedule?
Very little screen time, especially when they're young. We didn't use screens hardly at all. Um, they knew that there were certain TV days and they could watch things, but we were very careful throughout the years. I feel like we still are very careful with our high schoolers as to what they're exposing themselves to, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so we're very careful about what shows they're allowed to watch, how much time they're doing that, how much time they're on a screen. When our high schoolers get a phone at 16, they are not allowed on their phone throughout the school day. They cannot have it until 3 o'clock. That's when they typically leave for sports. And then they can have it to drive to their sport and do their activities, and then have it throughout the day after 3 o'clock. And then at night, it's on our island or our counter down in the kitchen. They are not allowed to have it in their rooms. No one has computers in their rooms. If they are doing schoolwork, they're allowed on their computers, but we have it no one has their own computer either. That's the other thing. We have a couple laptops in the house that we share. And as far as television, they knew growing up, there were certain days that were no TV days, and we did that. And so we try very hard to limit that. We have noticed that Andy and I both believe that that has made a big impact on them as far as their creativity and their imagination. They would be outside hours and hours playing and playing. And we still were thinking about this when we were going through these questions for today, thinking about last week, our 20-year-old was home from college for her spring break. She was outside in our wooded area in our fort. The kids have created a fort for themselves with our 8-year-old every day, playing with him. And our kids tend to play a lot of orphan games. We read a lot of books when they were younger that involved orphans. And so they play orphans all the time. And so they're outside playing this and acting this out. Our other daughter built a whole fort in the basement with our 8-year-old, and they were playing games in there last week. And so it's just allowed for that creativeness to come out in everybody and their imagination. So we limit the screens intentionally. So we call it mush brain. So you don't become a mush brain.
So it's a mush brain. Okay. Ideally, when we say there's no phone or no screen time, I know the younger ones, for them, it's easier to accept. But for the older ones, when they see kids around them using, how do they take it? How do they react to it? How were you able to handle it and stretch it till 16? Was it hard for you?
It's been a challenge. It's been a challenge. Yes, it was very difficult. I would say that it was probably most difficult with our oldest because she was the first. And so she's seeing all these kids getting these phones, and they're on their phones, they're communicating with each other. She's going to her dance class, and instead of sitting around in the circle with the friends talking, they're all on their phone, and she's sitting there. And so it was definitely a big challenge. One of our things that I'm sure my children are sick of hearing is, well, those kids are not my kids. This is our family. I'm not worried about what someone else is doing. I'm worried about our family and how we are going to handle what's coming our way. And so I know they're probably sick of hearing that because I say it quite a bit. But it was definitely a challenge. We had a lot of arguing with our oldest, like, but I should have it now because everybody else is talking to their friends. And we would say, all their phone numbers, pick up the phone and call them, communicate with them, plan activities, get together, all of that. And so once she set the stage of waiting till 16, and then they weren't allowed to have social media for another long time after that.
Oh, even after giving them phones, they were not allowed to have. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yes, they can text people, but they're not having any social media on their phones for quite some time. Our 19-year-old, who is a freshman in college, called me the other day and said, "Mommy, please don't be mad at me. There was something going on campus, and I needed to create an Instagram account, but I don't get on it very often." And it warmed my heart because he felt like he had to share with me that he created an Instagram account at 19 years old in college. And I was like, nice. Okay, we're doing okay here. It's definitely, I still feel like our oldest two are on their phones more than I'd like them to be, but they are definitely very aware of what we expect and why we expect it, what it is doing to our community and our lack of relationship and connection with people. It's not genuine connection when you're just on social media. One of the things you stated earlier was trying not to compare yourself to other families who are homeschooling. I don't go on Instagram and look at other homeschool families because they're posting these beautiful pictures. Even though I've been homeschooling for 14 years, I look at this and I go, oh, wait, maybe I'm not doing everything. Maybe I'm missing something. What should I be doing? And then I start panicking. There was this woman who said something about when we do that, we're looking at this one who is sitting there with stacks of like 100 books that their children are reading. This other one is their child is playing concertos on the cello. This other one is their child is building shelves. This other one is creating gourmet meals. We take all of those people and put them into one perfect person that we think we should be. That's not possible. It's not practical. It's not even anything we should be striving
it gives
towards.
us a lot of pressure.
And so I don't even look at the homeschooler websites anymore or Instagram or accounts because I was
you're not
creating
on
that
social
pressure
media,
for
anything
myself.
on social media platform? Wow.
No.
So I think before saying it to our children, you are living that. So you have the whole right to tell them that not to be on social media. That's great.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's one other thing regarding the screen time. So do they do all their learnings on system, or like is it just pencil and paper, or they're allowed to use the screen for educational purposes?
Yes, it is a combination of things. So let's do history, for example. With the history that I'm teaching our daughters right now, we're doing American history. And I have a book that's our spine. That's our main book that we go through. And I'm using that as my guideline to be teaching them where we want to go with American history. And I will then research various topics, and I might have a video that I want to share with them that gives them more information that will kind of pull it all together, the things that we're learning. And so we'll watch a small video. It might be 10 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer, but shorter videos. And then they pull it all together with books that we're reading. And then they'll have to do some research. And so they'll be given an assignment where they have to research, and I guide them on the websites that are appropriate so that they are seeing the information that I would like them to see, and not, sometimes there's too much information. You can find, you can type in civil rights movement and get way too much information. That's overwhelming to them too. They don't know where to go from that. And so I will guide them through which websites are better, which ones are more gentle, because, I don't want them reading things that a history buff wants to read and wants every detail, because some of it, that violence and aggression that unfortunately our world has experienced through history, is kind of difficult to handle. Emotionally, that's a big thing to put in your pocket. So we will do it that way. So screen time is limited, but they can use it to research. They have to check in every once in a while and see how they're doing. Their classes that they take at their co-op, they have to do a lot online. And it's more about their typing essays or stories or things like that. So they are definitely on the computer to answer questions and be able to complete projects.
So all this, what you're doing at home, is on top of co-ops, right?
Yes, because they're not taking full classes at their
it's
co-op.
up to us. So speaking about co-ops, I know we have talked about it so many times. So would you be able to, tell us a little bit, for the listeners who are unfamiliar with co-ops, what exactly is co-op and how it has enriched your homeschooling journey?
Sure. So the co-op in general is a gathering of homeschoolers, and it's typically run by the parents in the early elementary level. And so when we were in a co-op, when they were all younger, we would go every week, once a week, and they would do things like gym class, fitness, choir, some kind of an art. And then there would be various classes taught by parents that would involve possibly a literature group, a science class. We did science fair, different things like that. And as that would go, we would go to the co-op, and then we would all meet together, and then each one would go to their grade levels classes. They would meet with, so the first graders would go to their classes, and they would stay together through that day. So they would go to their gym class together, then they'd go to choir together. And then there might be 3 separate first grade classes where they would go to. Some went to science, some went to a literature class, some went to an art class. And so all those classes were taught by parents.
So it's like
one
bunch
of the
of
things that I
homeschooling
did
families,
was,
they run this. Okay.
yes, it's all homeschooling families. This is how our co-op runs. And so then I would teach some classes. That was a requirement as a parent
You
in the
have to
co-op,
teach
was that
something.
you would need to teach something. Yes. And so I taught sciences, literature, and art. Those were the things that I was comfortable. Oh, and
Okay.
fitness. I taught those were the things I was comfortable teaching. And so we would do that each week. And then at home, we would do more of the core subjects. And so we would do it like that when they were younger. Once they hit middle school and high school, the classes are different, and they are taught. Our co-op has teachers that they bring in to teach all the high school classes. So you can schedule your student for all of their classes there. We do not do that. We do sciences there because then they're doing their labs there, which makes it a lot easier. Like dissection, I didn't want to do that at home. And so they can do that there. They can take their chemistry there, or physics and that. So they'll take their sciences there. Then they'll take, depending on where they are, they'll take an academic writing class where it's like research and writing a long paper, a 10-page paper or something like that. We have had poetry classes, literature classes, creative writing classes. We even had a treehouse building class.
Wow. Okay.
That was really
I know
fun.
that you guys have built a tree house back in your backyard, right? Yeah.
We did. And our daughter took a treehouse building class, and she learned all about drawing the plans, and then they had to build their own treehouse out of cardboard and do it. It was just really fascinating. So we've had a lot of interesting things that have happened at our co-op too. So that is in general what our co-op looks like. Now there's another co-op we use, and it's called our academy. And that is just fine arts, theater, music. And our children have participated in the choir there. So they get their music credit there. Fine arts, drawing, sculpture, painting, things like that. Theater, that's our oldest daughter was very into the theater. And so she was able to participate in full-on musical productions that they did through that. So that's one of our other resources that we really love a lot. And our youngest now, he is also there, and he is doing a class this year, which is really fun. It's called What Instrument Is For Me. And every 6 weeks, he tries a new instrument. So he's done trumpet and violin, clarinet, and he's on the flute. So by the end of this year, he'll have had 4 instruments, and he can
Which one
decide,
to go?
hey, I want to try this one or not. And so they have so many wonderful classes there. And those are taught by outside teachers as well, that they bring into the academy. And so that's how our co-ops work. And they have definitely enriched our lives quite a bit. And also in high school, especially in high school, I felt like the pressure of high school felt big to me and very daunting. What if I mess something up?
Look.
That's how I felt. And this takes off some of that pressure and allows me to do the things that I enjoy with them. And then someone can take the pressure of the other parts so that it's a joint thing.
That's the best part. So like it's totally up to the family. Either they can choose to get the kids to go, or they can do it at home. Okay. So it depends on the family. Okay.
It depends on the family and probably on the co-op that you
Okay.
choose. I would think each co-op is
Different.
slightly different. We have several co-ops within our county, and each one runs just
So
a
is
little
there a
differently. I know
small
there is
fee that you
one.
have to pay to be a part of it?
So there is a small fee for in the elementary
Okay.
level. There's a small fee for being a part of it because you have to rent a space and make sure that everything is taken care of. And they do field trips sometimes and that. So there's a small fee for that. Once you hit the high school level in our co-op, we register each year and then there's a fee for each
Oh.
class. So that may also be a reason why people choose one or two classes versus all classes. Some people may choose it financially. Some people, we just like to have a couple of the classes rather than the whole day there. So I think it just depends on how that will function for you.
So, talking about co ops, the one thing which struck my mind is socializing. So, when I talk to parents about socializing, the one common question that I hear from them is about socialization. So, how do your children, make friends? How do they, be a part of communities? What does that social aspect look like in practice?
That's a really good question because I think that's a fear that many people have. And I think that many people who do not homeschool worry about kids who homeschool, that they're not going to get that socialization aspect. Um, I have never struggled with that at all, simply because we approached it a little differently. We feel like we want our kids to be socialized within our family first because those are the values we want them to have. So their socialization when they were younger was family first. So spending all this time together with their siblings, playing outside, that was their socialization. They were learning the values we wanted them to learn. Whereas in a traditional setting, they're spending 8 hours a day with 25 other families. That student is coming from their value system. So now you have 25 or 26 different value systems in a classroom. That can be as simple as the way you're allowed to talk with someone or talk to someone, talk about someone. It can be things like manners. Some families have them, some families don't. It can be what they're exposed to, what screen time they're allowed to have, whether they're on social media, whether they're on a phone at the age of 6, whether they're watching shows that I certainly would never let my 6-year-old watch, but everybody's got different values. So when Isabel was in school and she would come home at the end of the day, we had to kind of like deprogram a little bit and say, okay, well, that is the way you were talking to your friends. You may not do that here. We've also noticed that when our kids start sports in the public school, our second oldest, when he was doing sports, he would come home and start talking like all these kids were talking to each other. And I had to be very clear about, no, that if you're talking that way there, that's one thing. You will not bring that in the house. And so we had to be very diligent in reminding them that's not our family value, that's someone else's. And so when you think about it that way, the socialization in a school setting is kind of chaotic and they're learning a lot of things that's kind of bombarding them, and it pulls away from your family values and you have to kind of bring it back
Yeah.
every day. You have to bring it back. And so we felt like the socialization when they were younger was family first. You've got each other, go play. And then it was like neighborhood. They knew everyone on our street. They always have, whether they were a couple that was in their 60s or a young family with children. They spoke to everybody on the street. We would go for family walks and they knew everyone. They addressed their neighbors by Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, and they would talk to them about whatever is going on. They would go and play with everyone's dogs, so it kind of grew from family first, expand to your neighborhood. And then when they were a little older and they started joining like dance classes, they would make friends there, scouting, make friends there, joining in the co-ops, they have friends there. And one of the things that was a blessing were those co-ops where they would make a connection with someone, and then that child was also homeschooled. So then you could set up times to play during the day. And so they could build that through there. We also had various classes taught. We had a homeschool family that lived in the neighborhood. She had classes being taught at her house. So the kids went there and did a class or two, or, so it was all these different avenues of where that would kind of grow from family first, neighborhood, community. And it just kept growing. And then as they get older, they have joined sports teams, which our oldest never really wanted to be a part of, but the others have really enjoyed being on the sports teams. So they have their sports teams where they're then also making friends and connecting with people. And then they eventually will get a job out in the community. And so our 16-year-old just started working, and it makes me smile because she comes home so happy every day. She's talking with these people and enjoying her time. And at the beginning, I was saying to her, well, how old are these people? Are they in high school? Are they at the school close to where? She says, no, Mom, they're like 20, 25, 30. And she's having a great time because our kids have always been exposed to all age groups. And so they're able to communicate and interact and connect to all ages. So that's my philosophy on
it's a very unique
socialization
and very nice perception on socializing. I don't think that many people have this particular aspect of socializing. It actually adds a lot of value. It's a very different way of approaching socializing. So
thank you.
next thing is, as we are almost there to wrap up, I'm sure listeners would love to hear these two things from you. So the first thing is, what's that one bit of advice, like wisdom, that you would share for the mom or dad who's out there standing where you stood once? Is there anything that you want to share with them?
I would say there are a couple things. One, you know your children better than anyone else knows them. You know what they need. You know where they are, and you have everything within you to homeschool if that is what is on your heart. You are more than enough for your kids. And believing in yourself is probably going to be your biggest asset. Thinking I can do this and changing that mindset to a positive rather than focusing on what am I missing? What if I mess up? What if this? Focusing on, but I'm building connections with my children. I'm building these relationships. I'm teaching them to love learning, not just fill in the boxes and check we did math today, but to learn, to love, to learn. That it's not just about checking a box. You want to be a lifelong learner. That's what you want your kids to do. So my advice is that you are more than enough and you can do this. I also would say, don't let your curriculum guide your day. Let it be just a tool. If you choose a curriculum, let it just be a tool, because what you want it to be is that relationship with your child is more important than that curriculum. So if at the end of the day, you have to close that curriculum and sit down and cuddle them and play a game, that's going to be more beneficial than saying, but I made it through that today. You don't want to make it through it. You want to be joyful in what you're doing. So one other thing that I think is the biggest impact on our homeschooling is all the reading aloud we did together as a family, sitting on the couch, reading books, making those connections with our kids. So that's one piece of advice.
That's nice. That kind of gives us the courage, because we are drawn towards homeschooling, but we're also kind of daunted by that thought. Oh, am I doing it the right way? This gives a lot of courage.
So especially with my 8-year-old, we use games every day. He learns best with games, and I'm making up games all the time. We'll do flashcards with math, and he has to get so many right in a row, and then he can try to score soccer goals on me. And then we go back, flashcards, games, so it's constant games for him. He learns best with that. But read alouds are every day, even if it's just 10 minutes. we read aloud every day.
That's nice. That's nice. Thank you so much. What achievement gives you a kind of big smile on your face when you think about it in your homeschooling journey?
I think that one of the biggest achievements is that our children are very kind, compassionate, aware kids. They go out in the community and they will see someone that might be having a bad day and they go and they lift them up, and they might include someone that others might not even recognize needs to be included, or they notice that a friend of theirs needed help with something and they help. So, and they want to serve others and they want to do that and they bring that light out there. And that I feel is one of my greatest moments, something that brings me great joy to see that. And when it is acknowledged by someone else in the community and they give a compliment, your kids are able to hold a conversation with me. It's amazing. They look me in the eye. They call me Mr. So-and-so. They, all of these compliments that come back just makes you feel like, okay, phew, we're doing okay. So just knowing that they're bringing all that light into the world where it can be a little bit dark sometimes, I feel like that's one of our greatest accomplishments.
Mary, I totally agree to this part. I have seen them. I've spent time with your family, and I totally agree to this. They are wonderful children. The, thank you so much, Mary. Thanks for being on the show and sharing your almost 2 decades of your homeschooling journey with us. It's such a wonderful experience and a beautiful insight to our listeners. All the very best to you and your family for continued success and joy for your homeschooling journey.
Thank you so much, Bhuvi, and thank you for all your kind words. That's really encouraging to our family too. Thank you.